And of course, attitudes to those types of sexuality are still very much non de rigueur in certain parts of the world. I mean, that still persists. But actually, lest we judge, it wasn't that long ago that Western society still saw homosexuality as illegal and very much discriminated. Alan Turing, the amazing computer code decoder in the war, chemically castrated for being gay. I think it's 1967, 68, homosexuality became legal. So it's really recent, isn't it?
It's very recent. Yeah, it is very recent.
So we need to be careful not to judge other cultures that are slightly behind, but not by many decades.
Well, the other cultures, we also need to recognise actually that those other cultures actually were criticised by the West for holding very liberal, open, tolerant attitudes. So India, China, Japan. So through colonisation, looking at the way people, and the Middle East, I mean, all of these places where same-sex relationships weren't frowned upon in the way they came to be frowned upon in the West. So and then with colonisation, you find that the conquerors, if you will, the rulers, actually kind of saying what you're doing is unacceptable. It then finds its way, like in India, into the legal codes, which are now trying to be untangled. But it was the West imposing these negative attitudes onto those countries. And it's now the West's attitudes have changed. And now criticising those countries for the attitudes which they imposed on them. But it was also allied to this. So you kind of have this change in attitudes, but you also then need to have the kind of erasure of famous people in history who may have been lesbian, gay or bisexual. You need them, it needs to be modified. And there's some gross examples of this where people would destroy artworks and ceramics and sculptures and kind of showing same-sex relationships or burn them. But then there's also small things that happen. So I think it was Michelangelo wrote a set of poems, and it was only 250 years after the poems first came out, like the early 1900s, that it was actually found that the poems had not been written to a woman, they'd been written to a man. But Michelangelo's nephew, or great-nephew, had actually gone through the book of poetry and said, no, it's not going to work. So he actually changed each he to a she. So these small acts and the small things that are done with Shakespeare's works kind of make it. There's one academic is referred to as heterosexualization of Shakespeare, where these things which are ambiguous, actually they become quite clearly heterosexual. So you get the gross acts of destruction and these minor acts which kind of effectively kind of render famous people of the past to be heterosexual, to be straight.